Hello, and welcome to Day by Day True Crime Stories, the podcast where we explore a different crime or justice milestone from this day in history. I'm your host, Kona Gallagher, and today is March 12th. On this day in 2018, Nikolai Gushkov, a Russian exile and outspoken Kremlin critic, was found dead in his London home. At first, it seemed like a suicide, but as investigators dug deeper, they uncovered disturbing details that pointed to something far more sinister. Today, we're going to delve into who Nikolai Gushkov was and why his death was so suspicious. Let's get into it. Nikolai Gushkov was born on December 24th, 1949 in the Soviet Union. Highly educated, he earned a degree in physics in 1972 and later pursued economics at the Academy of Foreign Trade. By the 1990s, he was well connected in Russian business and politics and took on high-profile roles at AvtoVAZ, a major automobile manufacturer, and later Aeroflot, Russia's national airline. But working for Aeroflot opened a dangerous door. While examining company finances, Gushkov uncovered a shocking secret. The airline was being used as a front for Russian intelligence agencies. Out of 14,000 employees, 3,000 were operatives from the FSB, GRU, or SVR. Even worse, millions of dollars were being funneled into secret foreign bank accounts completely outside of the company's control. Gushkov didn't stay silent. He exposed the corruption and redirected funds into a Swiss company called Ondava, where he and his close ally, Boris Borovsky, were major shareholders. But by going up against such powerful forces, he made enemies at the highest levels. In 2000, Russian authorities arrested him, accusing him of fraud and money laundering. He spent years fighting legal battles, but by 2010, fearing for his life, he fled to the UK, where he was granted political asylum. But even in exile, he never stopped speaking out against the Russian government. And by 2017, Moscow had sentenced him in absentia to 8 years in prison, accusing him of embezzling $123 million from Aeroflot. The UK refused Russia's request to extradite him. Then less than a year later, he was dead. On the evening of March 12, 2018, Gushkov's daughter, Natalia, and his partner, Denis Trushin, became worried when they couldn't reach him. They went to his home in southwest London and made a chilling discovery. Gushkov was lying on the floor unresponsive. His watch and religious cross, which he never took off unless he was sleeping or showering, were neatly placed on the bedside table. The scene looked staged. When paramedics arrived, something felt off. One of them, Dominic Beale, later recalled, quote, "The moment I stepped in, something didn't feel right," end quote. Then Dennis turned to him and said, quote, "Don't touch anything. Someone killed him," end quote. Initially, police had to consider the possibility of suicide, but the autopsy told a different story. The medical examiner determined that Gushkov had died from compression to the neck, a clear sign of strangulation. But there were no defensive wounds, which suggested that he hadn't fought back. Experts believe that the attack was swift and calculated, likely carried out from behind using a chokehold, a technique that can render someone unconscious in seconds. But the biggest red flag was how staged the scene appeared. It didn't look to experts like a regular suicide. It looked like somebody had gone to great lengths to make it appear like a suicide. With growing suspicions, Metropolitan Police's Counter-Terrorist Command took over the case. The timing of Gushkov's death raised even more alarms. It happened just 1 week after Sergei Skripal, a former Russian spy, was poisoned in Salisbury with a nerve agent. Had Gushkov been another Kremlin target? The inquest into his death revealed that his assailant likely knew him. There were no signs of forced entry, and since Gushkov had security concerns, it was highly unlikely that he would have opened the door to a stranger. Authorities also investigated a black Volkswagen van, which had been seen near his house on March 11th, 2018, just one day before his death. But despite extensive inquiries, no suspects have ever been identified. Gushkov's death wasn't the first suspicious incident involving exiled Kremlin critics. He had been close friends with Boris Berezovsky, the Russian oligarch who had openly opposed Vladimir Putin. In 2013, Berezovsky was found dead in his home with a scarf wrapped around his neck. Authorities ruled it a suicide, but many, including Gushkov, believed that it was murder. Before his own death, Gushkov was actively investigating Berezovsky's case, convinced that his friend had been killed. So was it a coincidence that he ended up dead under eerily similar circumstances? Then there was Alexander Litvinenko, the former Russian spy poisoned with polonium-210 in London in 2006. And of course, the Skripal poisoning in 2018. Taken together, these cases painted a disturbing picture, one where critics of the Kremlin had a strange habit of turning up dead. Despite years of investigation, Gushkov's murder remains unsolved. The UK authorities continue to appeal for information, particularly about that black VW van that had been seen near his home. There are still many unanswered questions. Who was responsible for his death? Was it a Russian state-sponsored assassination? And how exactly did the attacker gain access to his home? As time passes, the chances of finding definitive answers grow slimmer. But Gushkov's story isn't forgotten. It remains a reminder of the risks faced by those who dare to challenge powerful regimes. The mystery of Nikolai Gushkov's death is more than just a true crime story. It's a warning. His fate echoes that of many others who have stood against the Russian government only to meet sudden and suspicious ends. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of Day by Day True Crime Stories. If you found this story compelling, please subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. And be sure to join me again tomorrow as we explore another significant event in true crime history. Until then, stay safe and remember that behind every headline is a life worth remembering. Day by Day, True Crime Stories is a Little Monster production.
Hey, you can do it!